just kind of shows you the power of women. When a woman begins to believe in a man, it gives that man pride. And then when that begins to really become an internalized belief, like, ooh, it can really change things for a guy, for sure. I'm really glad we're doing this second session, because in the last conversation, part of my point in sharing some very deep and personal details is that, it wasn't just so I could be on a podcast and bleed in front of the world. It was so I could really share the upside and kind of the recovery of some deepest woundings that I know I'm not alone with. And it's also an invitation to let other people know, like, yeah, those deepest sufferings is nothing to be ashamed about. Like, those are human dynamics, welcome to the human family. It happens to all of us. And really just overcoming kind of that element and letting people know, like, hey, with me, you have understanding. With me, there's a way out of that, so we can really renew our mind and a greater mind-body connection, so we can embody the newness of life and get out of the past. And so a big part of why I went on in so many of the ways that I did is just to share with people, like, yeah, there's a much deeper level to our human experience that is beyond the internalized conflicts, beyond the chaos, where we can truly have a fulfilling life that's where we really feel saved and kind of regenerated from those deep, not in bypass, not in repression of those deepest woundings, but understanding them as part of our progress and part of our journey. So truly, beauty and goodness can be created out of our worst trauma and suffering.
Amazing. Okay, so on that note, I just want to recap what we talked about in part 1. Obviously, people can listen to the full thing as well, but like, to make sure I'm up to speed or whatever, I've understood everything. So you grew up in Oregon and then California, Clover, California, which is kind of
Clovis,
like in the Clovis. Sorry. I was looking it up on the map. So it's kind of just like in the middle. It's such a big state, California.
Central, I know, it literally could be broken into like 3 parts, northern, central, southern. Yeah. I like to refer to that area of Central California as like the Bible Belt of California. Very conservative. It's actually the agricultural capital, one of the agricultural capitals of the world, right there in that Central Valley area. Air quality is really poor, very boring, flat land. It might as well be like the Midwest. It's just not a lot going on over there in that Central Valley part. So yeah, I was raised there.
Interesting. Okay. And then you're the second youngest of 5 children.
That's right.
And you told some stories. So we talked about the Oedipus complex and the like Freudian ideas of that relationship you have with the opposite sex parent, and how it's like a very vulnerable time, and how your experience with like a more controlling mother and how that really affected you.
Yeah.
And yeah, you said something so beautiful, because you're kind of talking about, everything going on with your parents and that there'd been infidelity, but you didn't find that out till much later. So there was kind of this tension, and, your dad was like this and your mum was like this, and all the suffering that caused. But then you talk about how important it is to like actually understand who your parents are and their stories, which I think is so powerful for so many people as they start their healing journey and they learn about like, oh, I was like fucked up from my parents because they didn't meet my emotional needs, and like, rah. But then you're like, hang on, my parents are humans as well. And like, how did they grow up? Oh, well, she actually grew up with like this super intense father and this, or like there was abuse there, or this, or they, and then it's like, oh, wow, they're just humans who like, they couldn't meet my emotional needs, but like they didn't have their emotional needs met either, or what, you kind of have this real perspective. So, and then you and then you focus on like remembering the good. I think that's like a Tony Robbins quote or something. It's like never too late to have a good childhood or something like that. It's like you can like shift your focus to thinking about everything you did have without like dismissing the other stuff that happened. Anyway, okay, so there was one story I think that really exemplified like the sexual shame stuff we're talking about. which is so sweet, about the girl across the road. And she the song like "Let's Get Physical" and her telling you like about what
Yeah.
hump means, and then you calling her and
Yeah.
being like, "Hey, do you want a hump?" Which is like so in it's like a 6-year-old saying that. And then your
Yeah.
mum overhearing and that kind of shame, which I think is so
Mm.
it's so interesting, it's so relatable, like, because obviously at school I remember we had this thing at school that was like pencil sharpeners or something, like a if you
Mm.
sharpened a pencil, it was like this innuendo that everyone knew about, and
Mm.
it's like we're like 6 years old talking about this because obviously it's like
Yep.
we're aware of sex and that it's like how a baby's made and all of this. But then
Yeah.
straight away the shame comes on that there's
Mm.
like wrongness about this, or like it's so weird, but it's like
Mm.
we're just learning. And you as well talked about some story of your mum kind of this shame of, you know, saying to you, "Oh, would you ever rape your sister?" Because some boy had like raped his sister, and you were just so
Mm.
horrified. I
Mm.
remember it's so because yeah, I remember as well learning about a kid at school was like, um, talking about the word rape, and he was like, "Do you know what that means?" And it's because we're all just
Mm.
learning at that age from curiosity, but then when the shame
Yeah.
is put on, anyway,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. It's deep. I mean, it's like, whoa, now I look back and I'm like, whoa, I mean, there's a whole like library of just inappropriate like boundary violation and just inappropriate projection of fear and insecurity into my little boy soul, and like kind of programming me to be afraid of just the natural essence of life is really built upon our body is the sexual foundation of our spiritual identity. And so when that begins to get contaminated, like in my story, and what I see, it's just so common, is that, unhealthy parenting, depending on the fulfillment that they have with one another, depending on the quality of their sexual relationship, the emotional health of their bond and union, that really hurts children if it's not healthy. And so I was the victim of that level. And like you said before, it really was like the way her father, my grandfather, treated her. And her, it really had to do with her feeling humiliated, and this is so common. I didn't realize how common this was, but, girls in that first expression of their sexuality, and it happens to boys and girls. This is actually, my conviction. Alexander Lowen writes about this in his books. He's the father of bioenergetics. He writes all over the place that yeah, the keystone arc in a personality is formed in that relational dynamic of the child in the sexual energy expressed in their emotional innocence and the purity of their heart towards the opposite sex parent. And that's where the greatest damage to the soul occurs. Is, are they respected? Does the parent hold healthy space for that to organically develop? Does the parent honor that? And in most cases, they don't, because the parents haven't done inner work. They're just programmed with all their trauma, and then they pass it on unwittingly. I think some of it is intentional. I think on a deeper level, which is it's kind of I don't want to say freaky. It's kind of creepy. It's kind of gross, actually, when you think about like parents. They don't want the child to have the sense of freedom that they didn't have, and they manipulate. There should be, honestly, Delia, there should be tremendous amount of freedom and independence in our sexuality. And when that doesn't happen, because children can be controlled so easily through guilt. All guilt ultimately filters down to sexuality. And our sexuality is directly connected to our spirit, to our inner child. And so, that's the way the parents are going to control their kids, is through guilt trips, guilt over their expression, guilt over their joy, guilt over it all. And then, once parents can kind of get to them and their sexual feelings and in their essence, they can really wrap that child around their finger. And then those become kind of the invisible boundaries and the invisible glass ceiling that the child can never, as adults, we're still bound up in that. As adults, we're still locked into these kind of subconscious frameworks of reality built on those relational dynamics in those first 7 years. And that's truly what the Matrix is. I mean, we see movies written about the Matrix, but no, truly the Matrix is how our spirit gets bound up in these unconscious barriers and tensions of mind that begin to try to control through this egoic character structure that's built upon fears of being fully ourselves. That's truly that really produces the fate that people have to overcome to reach their destiny. We have to undo those chronic character structures that have us bound up in restriction of perception. And the good news is that can be undone. That was the greatest discovery of my life. And so, but I appreciate your feedback and the impact of sharing that and bringing that up on those different dynamics. Because yeah, it all happened. All of that was part of the real story. Appreciate you. Yeah.
Okay, and so then
Mhm.
you talked about through primary school you had, or elementary school you had, that was like you really thriving and like really popular
Mm.
with the girls and whatever, with everyone. So
Mm.
good athlete, and but then high school was not so good,
Mm.
and you mentioned getting into martial arts for bullying. What was the nature of the bullying, or what started going wrong in high school or middle school or whenever it was?
I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I mean, I wasn't necessarily targeted and picked on incessantly. It wasn't like that, but it was a lot of it was just yeah, I mean, kind of picked on here and there. And the bullying, I would say, was really mostly on the home front. I would say the bullying was mostly the emotional bullying from my parents, mostly the bullying from, you know, not my youth wasn't respected, my sexuality wasn't respected, my desire for girls wasn't respected, and so I turned inward and really got into porn in those years. Um, it was just kind of lock myself in my room and just marinate in that stuff, and it was just so unhealthy, so demonic, so filthy, so gross, and it had a big impact on me, and just kind of shaping my worldview and my perceptions of people, and just looking at us as these objects. And I was just so fully consumed by it. It just had such a way of warping my mind and my perceptions. And yeah. Um, yeah, the good thing is we can recover from that. I mean, that's the truth. Like the mind can be renewed. The human soul is extremely resilient. But I would say that was the extent of that was kind of the mainstay of the bullying. And but yeah, and so got into martial arts from there, and yeah, that was kind of how that it was a good outlet. It was a good outlet for a time for sure.
How did you access porn back then? Sorry, I'm just thinking because I imagine now it's so much
Yeah.
easier the way the internet
Oh
is.
yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
what?
No, night and day. Well, I mean, started with like stealing the porno mags from the, from the convenience store. Started with that, rifling those, and the VHS tapes, and the Cinemax, the Skinemax, and the HBO specials, and that kind of stuff. The soft stuff leading to the hard stuff, and yeah, that's kind of.
Got it. And would you talk to friends and stuff about it? Like, was it like you were
Oh sure,
thinking that
yeah,
everyone was
yeah.
doing?
Like yeah, yeah. I mean, there were friends. That was kind of the big deal, right? Like, who could get their hands on that, triple X rated porn VHS tape? And hey, are you done with that, friend? Oh yeah, pass it over, man. That's a good one. Oh yeah, that's crazy. Like stupid kids, dumb teens. Yeah. Mm.
Okay, so then you got into
Mm.
the martial arts stuff and started learning about this kind of energy
Mm.
stuff, and you met this guy who was, what do you call that? He's like someone who's able to manipulate energy.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah, big time. I don't know. I mean, some would call him an energy master, or he would never go for that. He doesn't never liked. He's a very very humble guy. He loves Jesus. He's a follower of Christ. He's a very very grounded and centered man. He doesn't let any of this stuff go to his head. He realized his statement is always like, "Hey, man, I'm no different than you. We're all spirits of the Most High God. Nothing special there. Anything I can do, you can do as well, and I'll teach you how." And so that's always been his thing. The cool thing about him is when I got his material is that on the cover of the material, he had a scripture, and it was a scripture. Oh, it's Old Testament. It said something to the effect of, let not the rich man boast in his riches, the wise man boast in his wisdom, or the strong man boast in his strength. But let anyone boast in this, that he knows God. And he knows that God is good. And he knows that God is a God of justice and mercy and righteousness. And I thought, well, that's a trip, I'm like, wow. The world is all flexing in all these different areas of materialism and of the flesh and of what we can become and of our own egoic strength. And here he is saying, no, don't boast in any of that. Boast in the fact that you're made in God's image and that God loves you and you know that relationship personally. And I thought, wow, okay. And so that was kind of the beginning of something big, kind of understanding energy on that level. Yeah.
And is he based in California?
No, that's my mentor. He lives in Ohio, actually. Yeah.
Got it. So what were the you mentioned you're doing these breathwork practices and it became like super intense. You were accessing stuff and seeing spirits and things. What were those practices? Is it like the
Yeah.
holotropic breathwork or something like that?
No, nothing like that. It didn't complicate things. It made it that's the cool thing about his system and what he teaches and what I teach now is it's a lot more simple than that. It's really about getting back then I didn't know any of this. I didn't have the perspective I have now back then, obviously. But back then, it was mostly about, yeah, you can build up and store your chi or your energy into your belly. You can really build up kind of like a battery in your belly, and you can really connect your life force into one stored place and then project it out. You can project it out of your elbow, your wrist, your hand, your eyes, really any part of your body. You can send that chi out of there. And so that was really the system. It was very linear. Now it's changed over to more of a circular yin approach, but it was a very yang style in that sense, where it was very kind of, you just kind of bottling up this sexual energy, this life force energy. You're not really giving it any attributes. You're just building up just raw energy, raw electricity, essentially is what that is. And you're storing that in your belly and then projecting it out. And yeah, there's some cool things you can develop and skills you can develop even from that perspective. But the downside with that approach, Delia, is that it can cause all kinds of crazy hormonal fluctuations because you're really using breath work and the hormonal blood flow to build energy with that approach. You're not really building up the electrical nervous system capacity to hold greater and greater electrical charges, which is, what I've been training my body to do over the last really 20 years. And but back then, all I knew was, okay, build up a bunch of energy and open your third eye and put that energy in the belly and then project it out and conquer the world. And it doesn't really work that way. It causes all kinds of crazy fluctuations, emotional roller coasters. For me, it just opened up kind of hell's gates because I didn't have, a balanced nervous system. I was into all these bad habits. I didn't have good friends, was smoking dope, doing acid, watching porn. I mean, you couldn't ask for a greater recipe for disaster than that. Trying to combine energy work with poor character. Yeah, that's a quick recipe for flying off the cliff. And that's pretty much what happened. And, yeah, I'm just so thankful that that only lasted for a season to kind of learn from my mistakes, to be able to open up my soul to God and be like, hey, help me repair this damage. I was going the wrong way with that. That's not the way this energy works. And, since that time, and what I tell people that I work with is like, look, the most powerful man that ever lived had the most integrated prefrontal cortex, and he is who he said he was. That was Jesus Christ. And same with what Alexander Lowen even promotes in his work is like, look, if you want to overcome your deepest trauma, if you want to overcome the deepest woundings to your mind body connection, is become a loving person. You can't force it. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to be loving, I'm going to be joyful, I'm going to be happy. No, you got to heal your body so your body can receive more and more of who you truly are. I mean, your body since birth, it knows it's not you, but we get conned into over-identifying with the pain and the trauma of our body. And that's the big lie. But the more we heal our body, the more we can have a clear witness perspective, and we can really begin to heal on that nervous system level and in the social engagement system. And then, yeah, and then all those goodies can come later. But the first things first, one foot in front of the other. That's why I always start with bioenergetics, because that's the meat and potatoes of my work. You have to have a strong body, or sexual foundation with a regulated nervous system, a balanced internal energies of masculine and feminine, balance that internalized mother and father, heal those emotional conflicts and wounds, so we can really have that energy rise up and flow through our body without any of those blockages that fear causes. And the better we get at that, and the greater degree of the quality of the relationship we have with our own body, the more those spiritual attributes just automatically kind of fall into place. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, I'm thinking of two things in my experience. So more recently with psychedelics, I've used it as in such a way of healing. So like really helped me with depression in a really like spiritual, beautiful way, to the point that I've associated psychedelics with like, oh, it's always healing, it's always beautiful. And when you were talking about like, oh, LSD, watching porn, like that's like really mess your mind up. But in my head, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no, but LSD, it's like healing. But then I'm remembering, as you said that, when I first did something that was like hallucinogenic and had insane, like a demon was coming to kill me, and it was like this terrible trip and like locked in. So now because then it's like that's the fear. And I think the people I was with were like, this was in Ibiza as well, like classic. The people I was with are like, oh yeah, drugs are so great, they can never hurt you. And then they saw me and they were like, okay, there's something wrong. Like you should just, I don't know what's going on. Obviously, like, yeah, that fear was projecting itself and like really messed me up. But then I'm also thinking of when the reason I said holotropic breathwork is because when you talked about working with that mentor, but then it was like you were in too deep and he was kind of like, I can't work with you, or like you need to take a break. And you were walking around like, oh my God, I've experienced all this stuff and like God loves me and like life is amazing and like, but I have no one to talk about this with. Like, why does no one understand me? That's kind of like, I did this breath work, one of the intents, like when you're breathing to kind of get to that almost hallucinating, or yeah, when it's like the intense breath work, and then I have like insane visualizations, and I truly I'm like, oh my God, like my whole body's filled with light, like I'm connected to the universe, like I almost feel like I'm levitating. It's like, oh no, I do feel like it's like, but obviously I know I'm not. And then it's so hard to, I mean, now because I'm older and I can be confident talking about this stuff and I don't care that people might not be able to relate to that. But it is overwhelming, and it's almost like you need time to and it's not like something that I could just do every week, because it's like that was so overwhelming. It was so incredible what I experienced, but it's a lot for the nervous system, and it's almost, even going into one of those, it's like this is going to be so intense, like, but almost at the same time unbelievable, because it's like, really, can the breath make you feel these insane things? And then it happens and it's like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. When did that happen?
I've done a few of them, and every time they're crazy, and every time beforehand I'm like, oh, is anything really going to happen? And then it does. But the last one was maybe a month ago. But it is like, it's one of those things that's like, oh yeah, that's cool, and I can't wait to continue exploring in that direction, but I need to be called to go again, because it is so much. But that's obviously different. I don't know, like I've done Kundalini yoga and stuff, but it's probably the very basic. Like I haven't ever really gone into what you're talking about with like controlling the chi in your body. Or even I just started reading someone talking about like astral projections and that type of stuff, like projecting your consciousness outside of you. Like that stuff I haven't experienced yet. But I think I'm doing, by the sounds of what you're saying, I think I am doing the right route to make sure it's like grounding my nervous system, like being really gentle with the somatic
Mhm.
stuff and like coming in and
Yeah.
like removing any shame or fear in the body. And
Yeah.
then I can
Good.
start doing cooler stuff or whatever as it naturally comes.
Yeah, and there's always going to be that's kind of the danger, isn't it? And so much of the like people that do breath work or talk about that is breath work can be very powerful, but it's also in a way it's kind of disrespectful to the body. In most of the breath work approaches out there because again you're manipulating energy and the body is not ready for it most of the time. And so, the systematic methodology that I use with bioenergetics is an incremental expansion of that window of tolerance. And so that's the key that we want to talk about is resetting the nervous system set point. So you have a stronger ability for your body to hold those charges and to process more information. And so it's a gradual opening up. It's not a like a 2-hour holotropic breathwork session to get high on your own supply. And then oops, the next day your character structure and all those unconscious muscular tensions fall right back into place. And then that was just like a distant memory. And how can I get that again? It's like what I teach is actually how to overcome the character structure that has limited our breathing. The egoic character structure of limitation on breathing is a limitation on being. And so this is what I'm so passionate about teaching is there's a way to um, re-engage with the body in a very respectful approach, combining breath work and very specific movements of the body. So we begin to incrementally open up the nervous system, establish a new set point. And it's very healing. It's very nourishing. It's a very, very nourishing system because it shows the body it shows you how to attune to self-regulation, how to really open that central channel and get the brain and belly matrix opened up. That's really the central channel, and it's a very relaxed breathing posture. It's all done on the bed, so in the safety and security of your own bed, and it's a very specific posture and a very relaxing breath. And then that's kind of that breath and that specific posture. On top of that, then we add in, some different eye movements, there's all kind. I mean, there's a whole system where we de-armor the eyes, face, neck, throat, shoulders, core, and then legs. But it's all from this. It's called the natural awe breath, the awe breath. And so it's bringing breath in from the belly. You feel the belly, you feel the chest, and then awe. And then we let it out, and then everything descends, and then we do that breath again, and ah, and then it just begins to indoctrinate the body into diaphragmic breathing. What it really does, Delia, is it restores the faith of the body into its natural organic connection to the life process, to its natural state of resiliency that we lost because of childhood trauma. And so it's a pretty dynamic system in that respect.
Cool.
Mm.
Okay. So back to your story. So you finished school and then you moved to San Diego and
Mm.
learnt carpentry and was working with your brother and living with your
That's right.
siblings. What was your attitude to life at that point? Like, what were you motivated by? And did you keep, when you moved, did you keep smoking weed and all that stuff, or you had kind of like broken out of those high school patterns?
No, the weed was still there. Yeah, it's just a different group of friends. I was working at a grocery store as a bagger in the night crew, and yeah, it's still. I was still just very much kind of coming out of that very dazed and confused state of some really bad acid trips, and just had really no idea who I was. I had the memory of those different events and the crazy episodes of trying to go too far, too fast, and push myself to be enlightened. But at the end of the day, what I realized is, wow, every day is just kind of a chop wood, carry water, you know, experience. It's just normal everyday living is really where the profound is discovered. And And so, yeah, it was more of just the dynamics of being that younger brother that my oldest sister and my older brother didn't really respect. I was kind of like the dumb younger brother who needed to kind of get with the program based on, their version of life. They were all in their 20s, mid to later 20s by that time. And yeah, I was, it was a struggled, really struggled. And, it only lasted a couple of years before I moved back home for a couple of years, and then from there launched back down here, and then I've been here since. So yeah.
Did your parents have a lot of influence on you at that point in terms of what you should do after school or moving to San Diego or anything like that?
Not necessarily, not necessarily. Yeah, I was yeah, I was just kind of I didn't really. I was just they were kind of checked out. I mean, presence the presence from my parents wasn't really strong in terms of an example of leadership, and they weren't really the wells of wisdom that I had hoped they'd be. So there was still just so much emotional dependence on them at those stages. I was trying out life outside of their authority and control, but yeah, it was such the early beginnings of my independence being discovered, trying to reorient myself to life from an adolescence that still felt like it was really held deeply captive by their perspective on the way life should be. And so didn't know this until, in reflecting on the past, but that's really just such an undeveloped, uncurated sense of self at those times for sure.
Mhm. So you were like, I'll just figure it out on my own. I've got to earn money. I'll get a job.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That's kind of how it went. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And why did you decide to move home? What were those years like when you returned home?
Yeah, good question. I was just struggling. There were a couple of events that took place that really kind of like rocked my world. Um, um, and I was injured, and hospitalized, because I was acting out at a party in a way that I shouldn't have been, and yeah, and it really just kind of hurt my confidence, hurt like my ability to know who I was. It hurt me kind of on the social emotional level of identity, and I was just like, oh, I was really wrecked and really hurt by that. And so I was like, yeah, I mean, at least if I'm at home, I have a place to feel safe. Not really though. I mean, not really. That was just the kind of crutch that I had as an opportunity to go home, and so I did. But yeah, so it was more of like a safety net for me at that point, more than anything else.
And did you feel safe in those couple of years returning home,
When I
or it
moved
was
back
like,
home,
yeah,
not really. I mean, no, I mean it was what it was, because I was so wrapped up in it. I didn't really know who I was. I was kind of stuck in this kind of like purgatory of, okay, I think I know who God is. I think God is good. There was no real relational quality of connection to life in a meaningful way. I was just so tremendously lost in those years. And yeah. One thing that I always did well at, I went to a junior college up there for a couple of years. And I was just it was like breathing to me, philosophy and psychology. I didn't even really have to study for those courses. You hear some people like, oh, they didn't even have to study. I mean, for me, it was just like, it just made sense. It was just like, oh, wow, I get it. I get it. Like, this is like breathing for me. It's always been that way. And so that was something that I really took to because I could digest it. It just was understood at the level of soul. And so I was thankful for that. My philosophy teachers and had a couple of really good ones. And but yeah, but in terms of okay, how does this come home? How does this apply to daily living? How can I love myself and know myself? None of that really registered. But when I did move back down to San Diego, I started off first in Orange County, living with my oldest sister at that point. When I first moved, I was working on the road. My brother's like, hey, we got work up here. And I was like, okay, I want to join. I finally want to leave home for good. And so I did that. And then worked in Northern California, Sacramento, Davis area. And then from there, ended up back down Southern California in Orange County. And then from there, I was like, well, I can kind of live with my sister's here. She'll take me in, no cost, no rent. And so I started junior college down there, Saddleback Junior College, to see what I wanted to do. I had this weird idea like, oh, I should be a dental hygienist like my sister. She seems to think it's easy money at working, not full hour, not a 40-hour week. She's making great money. That sounds good, you know, uh, a big payoff for low effort. And but I'm like, oh, but I gotta go through school and put all these credits in. And I was like, that sucks. Like, I don't really want to do that. So, in those times of pondering life and what my new direction would be, I went to a bookstore and I found this amazing book by Theodore Rubin, the psychiatrist. It was called Compassion versus Self-Hate. And I read that book and I'm like, oh goodness, there's some good stuff in here. Like, I can relate. And started talking about, like, you know, these sons connected to this overdominant mother and how they did therapy. And they're like, wait a second, I can have life beyond the grip of a controlling mother, and all kinds of examples in there. And I was tripping out. I'm like, this is real. Other people can actually have this sense of freedom that I too desire. And there's a way to get that. I mean, who has the money to hire a psychiatrist? I thought to myself, that's crazy. Do I have to go to somebody like that to feel that freedom? And so the wheels were turning. I'm like, okay, here's an opportunity. It sounds like a doorway to the kind of life where I'd feel good about myself finally. And I remember bringing that book home, and my sister, she's like, she saw that book, and I heard her on the phone with my parents, and she's like, Daniel's reading this book called Compassion versus Self-Hate. I felt like she was telling on me, like, he's about to break the family system and your control over him. I love your guys' control over my life and how you dictate policy and how I should feel emotionally. He's trying to pull rank and become somebody independent by reading this book. That's my impression now, thinking back on it. And it was so weird. I'm like, what kind of family system am I in? This is crazy. And so I bailed. I just packed up my stuff and left. And I'm like, I'll find a job, and moved to San Diego and never looked back. I found a job as a host at Pioe's on Coronado Island. I found a guy who was the regional manager of these different food chains connected to that restaurant and others. And I used to babysit his girl. And so I called him up. I'm like, hey, man, I know you're the manager here. I need a job, guy, and I need one tomorrow. Can I get one? I was kind of like kind of like in the tone of, you owe me one, man. And he was cool though. He hooked me up, and I went there and was a host, and then just one thing kind of led to another, and ended up getting a job, as a pizza delivery driver. And then from there ended up getting my insurance license because I needed that to sell mortgage insurance. I got a job as a slinging mortgages at Conseco Home Loans, and then from there ended up working for an independent mortgage broker, and then from there I ended up signing on to an insurance agency, life insurance agency, and then from there I ended up quitting that job and becoming self-employed and starting my own agency, and then from there ended up getting married, and then from there I ended up having a bad accident, and that really hurt things for us. And then I ended up finding my job that I was at for 16 years, and so I landed in at an insurance broker and became, did very well there. I was very successful there, and so yeah, it was just that kind of timeline of events and how I worked. And
So was
yeah,
that a real turning point at the point you left your sisters, moved to San Diego, got a job? Was you had that book? Was that the point that you were like, I'm going to be independent, go on this journey, figure things out for myself?
it really was. It really was. Like, there was something in me like, okay, I don't need to be dependent on anybody. I'm going to write my own ticket here. I don't need my brother for a carpentry job. I don't need my sister for a place to live in. It's like, come on. I just had a good look in the mirror, like, okay, I'm so much more than this. Like, I can make something of myself. But the real tipping point, I like to tell you, the motivation of women for a guy to get his act together. It was his girlfriend that I had in Pacific Beach when I lived there. And she saw me driving. So it was one of these, the place kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with that show called Melrose Place. It was a really big deal in the 90s. And it was kind of like this, 90210 offshoot called Melrose Place. And that's when I was living in this environment where it was kind of like that. It was this kind of had this central court and these apartment complexes surrounding, kind of like these tables down the center. And I lived with this dude there, and I had my eye on this, the really hot blonde of the apartment complex. And And he's like, oh, psh. He's like, give it a rest, dude. She's way out of your league. There's no chance. And she was older than me. And I was what, 22 at the time, 22 or 23. And she was in her later 20s. And but we ended up dating. We ended up getting together actually. And she was like, you're a pizza delivery driver. You could be so much more than that. And I'm like, seriously? Okay. Well, I kind of think so, but you think so? She's like, yeah. I was like, well, shoot. All right. And so I started saving up my tips and started, that's when I went and got my insurance license because I got a job. I put out some resumes, got a job at this place, Conseco, and I just started killing it there. I was super motivated. It was like a woman believed in me. She was like, oh, she's like, this guy over here, this neighbor, he's pulling down 6 figures a year selling copy machines. And I'm like, you're way better than him. Are you kidding? And I was just like, really? Okay, if you say so. Okay, I'm kind of feeling it. Yeah, let's go. And so it motivated me. And yeah, like that was a big turning point for me. It was her. She was fine. She was like, I was like, whoa. I kind of felt like just gave me confidence. Gave me real, real big confidence. And I was living in a beach area, it's high competition in the sexual marketplace. And there's this hot girl that I scored with, and now she's my girlfriend, and she's telling me she sees my potential, and I started to buy into it. And it was true. And that really changed things for me. It set a completely different tone on my ambition and my belief in myself. And just kind of shows you the power of women. When a woman begins to believe in a man, it gives that man pride, sexual pride. And then when that begins to really become an internalized belief, like, ooh, it can really change things for a guy, for sure.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And why insurance? Was that just why mortgage insurance? Did that just happen to be a job you
Well,
applied
we
for?
sold mortgages, and then I had to get my license to sell the mortgage insurance that they were making us push at the same time. Credit life insurance, what they called it. And why? I don't know. It just, my dad sold insurance. So I think it was something like that. There was just some kind of like unconscious blueprint there on, okay, be like your old man. And so, yeah, that was kind of the story with that, I think.
Got it. But the mortgage, the job you got, was that just random? You were just giving out CVs everywhere, or was it like, okay, how do I make money? I've heard there's money in this.
It was. So I went to get my insurance license. How did I get that job? Well, so as I was in the training course and getting my life insurance, life and health insurance license, I met a guy in that class. And then that guy, I forget. So I think that came first before it was actually a required thing from the company. And then I met a guy in there um, who worked at a mortgage company, and he was there. The company made him go there so he could get the license. And then I think I'd gone there just to get my license on my own, thinking that there could be money to be made in selling health insurance. And back then there could be, before they had all these different regulations in California. So, but at any rate, so I met him, and then he ended up becoming my friend. And then he knew that he was going to get a referral fee if I got hired on at Conseco. And so I got hired on, and I ended up doing really well, making him look good. He got paid, and then yeah, and so that was kind of the transition into that kind of job. You know.
And then how much later was it that you got married and that you had that accident?
It was around 2005 that I got married. So it was like 4 years later. And, between that time, I'd gone from that job into being self-employed. And I was self-employed when I got married. And then, yeah, and then that's when that happened, right around 2005.
Uh-huh. So stuff happened like really quite quickly. Or is that like a
It really
standard
did.
thing to have your own insurance agency?
Well, I took money that I had saved up and launched out to begin building a book of business with health insurance through selling policies to the different small businesses here in town. And so I would just kind of canvas areas and walk in there and just be like, hey, you guys need a quote? And I would sell policies that way, because for me, I wanted residual income, and there was a lot of residual income you could earn off of that. And, and yeah, and so I did that for a period, and that worked out pretty good. And then from there, um, ended up getting married, and, and then I ended up having that kind of limb-threatening accident to my right leg on a skateboard, on an electric skateboard that I bought. This is kind of like when electric skateboards first started to become a thing, and it shattered my right tibial plateau into 40 pieces. And you know, I was working, and then I wasn't working, and I wasn't working. Now she was only working, and just ate up savings. It just really diminished me. I mean, it was a real blow to my ego. It really just crushed me. And so it was at that time that I kind of reached out to my mentor that I'd met in my teen years, and it was just kind of like, almost like just like, hey man, can you help me out? Like, I'm in a real pickle here, you know? And it was kind of during that event that he adopted me, spiritually adopted me in a way, to help me heal and to help me grow and help me grow up and help me kind of face all my selfishness and just how much of a bonehead I was. And for that, I'm ever thankful. You know, it taught me it taught me what masculine love is, what tough love is. It taught me really what fatherly love is. You know, fatherly love is correctional. It's discipline. It's, hey man, you got to get your shit together. Like, you're a freaking wreck. Um, and I listened to it because he was a powerful man. He was the only guy that really could get through to me, and made a lot of sense on multiple levels. And it really changed my life. I healed. I got out of my narcotic addiction that I had. Um, I ended up becoming very successful. It was amazing how quickly those blessings happened. I mean, all kinds of crazy things, even just within the first 2 years of me healing from that event, um, rose up really strong in the company, just really blew up. And I was so blessed. Yeah. And that was a big transition for me. Yeah.
So in those 4 years leading, or what, that time frame where you got into insurance leading up to the accident, what was your spiritual practices or relationship with that like? And what was your relation like? What were you still smoking weed? Were you drinking, partying?
I was trying to be a good Christian boy. Let's say that. I was trying to be good, but that was mixed in with a lot of partying, a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking weed, a lot of sleeping around. I was trying to be good. I was trying to be good, but it wasn't really happening. You know, I was in my 20s. I was just filled up with testosterone and those kind of animalistic drives that are, part of our human nature, but I was just so unbalanced. I mean, I didn't, most people in their 20s, and especially if they're guys, are really just as confused as that. And I lived in a beach scene. I lived right on this strip in Mission Beach, literally right on the boulevard. And I had the bay on one side, the ocean on the other, and yeah, lived right there overlooking the main strip, and it was party central. It was like Sodom and Gomorrah down there. It was party central. There was no spiritual, real healthy, wholesome spiritual healing energy down there at all. I was in the war zone, spiritual war zone, we could call it. And yeah, it was struggle. It was a struggle to try to, like, okay, how do I find God? Okay, I'll go to church like maybe once a month to try to see if there's any goodness in life, any goodness in me. And it was a hard time. It was a hard go for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you didn't, the girl you married, it wasn't that girl you were talking about before. Someone else.
Well, so that was my now ex-wife, and I met her on eHarmony. And that was when eHarmony had first kind of broken through on the scene. The funny thing is I met her on eHarmony, and I'm like, oh, well, this has got to save the day. I mean, we matched on these 29 dimensions of the personality. I was as honest as I could be on this personality test. And then it's funny is at the time, um, my younger sister, she found her husband on eHarmony, and then my second to oldest sister found her husband on eHarmony. I'm like, eHarmony must got this figured out. I mean, this matchmaking system. And now I realize, oh man, eHarmony kind of sucks. Like, I would never go on there again. But anyways, back then, apparently there was something to it. We ended up getting married, and yeah, and that was that chapter in my life.
Okay, and then was it difficult? Because in last episode you mentioned Xanax and Oxycontin that presumably was like prescribed as for pain medication, and then that was like turned into an addiction cycle. Was that difficult to break?
Well, you just cycled down, you just do less and less. And then I had my mentor who's, this energetic master healer that, helped kind of work on me energetically as I was trying to heal from this, deeply addictive substance that really had its hooks in me. And yeah, that was not an easy journey, but it did eventually happen. And that's really what began to change my life. I just had, he'll even tell me today, sometimes he'll even remind me, sometimes he'll be like, man, you were a freaking mess. I mean, I truly was. He didn't know who he was going to get. I would show up, sometimes this way and sometimes this way, typical symptoms of an addict. You don't know, okay, what's showing up here? The person that feels alive because they're doped up, or the person who's down and angry because they don't have anything, or, I was a wreck. I'm just a walking testimony of recovering from that level of despair, that level of addiction. It was really, really such a trying time, those early 20s. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
basically destroyed you financially because you were self-employed, so you couldn't work.
That's not what destroyed. I mean, what really destroyed me was being, having my knee shattered and not being able to work. And that's what really hurt me financially. That was 6 months into our marriage, and this crazy, accident happened. And that's what really kind of ate up the savings and just made me feel so down and out. And it was like during that period when I really reached out for help. I was like, please, somebody help save me. I don't have this figured out. I need help. And I was just kind of limping along in life. And yeah, I had no real vitality, had no real mind body connection, nothing to even speak of. It's just, I was such an empty, broken soul. Yeah. Yep.
Huh. And so what was that period of recovery from the accident to then when you were in that six-figure insurance job thriving again?
Oh, that happened very rapidly. I would say within a year. Um, yeah, it was within about a year and a half. I was doing pretty well. Yeah, happened pretty quick. By the grace of God, it really did.
So was that kind of the lowest rock bottom of your life, that accident?
Mm-hmm. I'd say so. Yeah.
And did you fully recover, like the leg, the injury?
I don't run, but I walk, and I have a little bit of a. I mean, it could be mistaken for just some real swag. My very slight limp. I mean, I don't like to stretch and all. I mean, I'm just kind of stubborn that way. Who likes to stretch? It's not fun. It hurts. And so, yeah, like a very slight limp. I mean, I could iron that out. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. But if somebody's really trying to look at my gait, they could probably pick up on that. But yeah, I mean, I don't run. I could run my way out of a burning building at the drop of a hat if I had to. But I don't want to, because I want to have kids. I want to play with my kids someday. I want to have, like, I'm going to save that knee for those special moments. I could probably play a good game of pickleball. I used to love tennis. I can't play tennis anymore just because of the quick pivots you have to do. And so, yeah, but it's, I've got a couple of titanium plates in my leg that kind of sandwiched it all together and made it made it feel new again. I'm so thankful they were able to save it. When that accident happened, this is the first thing that ran through my mind. When my knee split, it mushroomed out like that. Literally, like I landed wrong and my knee kept going, but my rest of my body stayed in one place, but my knee was bowing out in the direction it shouldn't be. And so it was literally like that. My knee was like, it should normally be just straight up, and it was going to the side like that. That was the splitting of the tibial plateau into 40 pieces. And so they put some plates on there to sandwich that all back, and 17 screws from top to bottom. So it was all got monkeyed together in the miracle of modern medicine. And but yeah, that's there's no pain though. There's no pain. I'm just careful with it, and I can't do it in I can't do a full squat, but I can get down to 90 degrees, a little bit less than 90 degrees. I was really concerned about that too. I love to do heavy squats. I was a big bodybuilder and but I don't do any of that now. I'm just mostly about like, lightweight training and, the energetic training I do and the bioenergetics I do. That all keeps me feeling fresh and new. I didn't mean to rhyme.
Okay. So then there was like this, you were in this job for 16 years. So from that point, was it like life kept getting better and better? Obviously, there's like ups and downs. Or was there like a major? Because last time you talked about like there's some point where you became super fit. But then you almost became, yeah, because then you were promoted, but then you almost became like this way too intense manager. You wanted everyone to do the work. And then there was like another shift where you became more of like a compassionate leader or something. But on the whole, is it like from that rock bottom, it's just been like life's been getting better and better? There's just been different stages.
Oh yeah, night and day. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and this is the encouragement to anybody listening to this podcast is, stay on that journey. Never stop. There's always going to be different stages of growth, and that's how it was for me, Delia. I appreciate you asking and kind of what was how that all worked out. And yeah, I mean, there were stages where I started to become emotionally healthy, and then I started to notice that my wife at the time started to pull away because I was eliminating the emotional dependency that she felt she had to do in terms of being there for me as kind of the mother. And so as I started to heal energetically, I got into like David Data's Way of the Superior Man. I joined a men's group and just started getting into men's work. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I mean, I learned about that through some podcasts I was listening to, and I started to heal. And I'm like, oh, so this is what it feels like to be a man. This is kind of cool, like camaraderie with other men, the solidarity of the manhood and brotherhood and all that. And as I started to get healthy in these dynamic ways, she started to pull away. And it was really kind of at that time that, my mentor had told me in later years, like, he's like, yeah, I can kind of read into your situation. I could tell she started to just form an attitude. She really did. She just started to form an attitude of heart against me, not with me, but she was against me. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't know it at the time. I just kind of was like, okay, she can just be like that. I'm not going to stop my journey of health and vitality and becoming, robust and healthy. And, but yeah, and then from that time, you're right. That's kind of where we left off in the last recording is that from there, um, I was doing really well at work, got the attention of the higher ups, the attention of management. And and right around a few things were happening right around the same time in 2014. I did go through a workout program. It was called the Hollywood Physique. And by this guy, his handle wasn't his real name. His name Clay Rogers was his handle, and he formulated this program on how to get the wide shoulders, the ripped six pack, and the physique, the Hollywood physique. And I followed that program to the letter. I was committed because I started to get results really quickly. And I started to kind of get the body that I always wanted when I was on steroids and being an idiot in my 20s. And now I'm in my 30s by that point, my mid 30s, and I started to really get the physique that I always wanted to begin with. But I'd never been educated on the exact process and science of achieving that. So it was just a very strict ketogenic diet with an all-in, eat anything you want for only 1 hour window, 1 day a week. And so it was a way of throttling the metabolism and really playing with the chemistry there. And I got chiseled. I got down to 8.5% body fat. I was ripped. I was like, dang, I look better than some of these dudes on the Men's Health cover magazine. I was chiseled and I felt proud. I was like, wow, I'm a machine. And I was pumped. And then that translated into, the management's like, wow, this guy, not only does he hit all of his numbers and he far exceeds that, but now look at him. It's like, great, let's hire him and let's get him in management. And so now, at the same time, though, I discovered through podcasts, through Dave Asprey's Bulletproof podcast back then when he was kind of in the origins of his company growth. And on one of his podcasts, I learned about this book. I think it was through Gabor Mate. I might have that wrong. It might have been Gabor Mate on a Tim Ferriss, but it was one of those podcasts that were popular. And I heard about Drama of the Gifted Child, this book by Alice Miller. And so I'm going through this workout program, but then now listening to all these podcasts and trying to be this optimized biohacking machine. And I read this book and I'm just like, okay, hold on. This book is convicting me to my core. It's talking about stuff that I had never even really looked at in a heartfelt way. But I'm like, it's time because, yeah, like I'm in a management position now. I'm making more money. I have this authority and this leadership role. But I was really expecting, I didn't know that I was acting out, but I was really acting out from wanting people to perform, wanting them to get their act together. I was like, hey, you guys need to be like me and start hitting your numbers. Like, come on, get with the program. And it was this very kind of like this rigid, hey, you guys are broken. I'll show you what needs to be done to fix it. If you don't hit your numbers, you're out of here. I mean, I was kind of a dick like that, the typical corporate manager, like it's all about the money and the bottom line, and we'll give you a few Starbucks certificates if you hit your goals this week or whatever. And it was just not the right way. I didn't really feel that good about it. I mean, I didn't feel that good that people were kind of put off by my kind of attitude of superiority and almost an arrogance. And I started to read that book, The Drama of the Gifted Child, and it's like, oh shit, that's me. She's talking about me. She's talking about me just manifesting the attitudes and values of my parents and the family system that I came from, feeling really inferior, feeling really like I had to do something to overcompensate for this level of humiliation and the way that my emotions and my feelings were treated with contempt by my mother. And now it's like I have a platform to get even? I'm like, they didn't do anything to me. They just want to be successful. And I'm like, oh shit, what do I do? So I hired some guy here locally who was an expert at kind of the reparenting of the soul for us to become integrated and healthy on those deep unconscious layers and how to peel that back, because that book was very clear. The Drama of the Gifted Child. The book basically says this in summary, like, yeah, the whole point of therapy is that you don't stay in therapy because you learn the map of reality according to the family system of trauma. So you develop a resiliency in knowing how to have secure attachment, how to read life. So you're no longer unconsciously trying to defend yourself against unforeseen threats. You're no longer afraid of the forces that be that are trying to intimidate you and take control over you. And I'm just like, this is really what's going on here. This is crazy. And so, yeah. Yeah. So I hired that guy and we went through 3 months of some deep, intensive somatic experiencing. And he was able to see me, and he was like, wow, you're really terrified right now. You're like this scared boy. And I'm just like, I'm not scared. Crazy. I'm like, okay, I'm scared. I think broke down. And it was crazy, feeling that I that witnessed, like that observed, that seen. Oh, I was like, oh my God. I'm like, man, I'm been crucified here. Is this safe? Is it safe to be this naked and this vulnerable? And it surely was. It surely was. He was a trustable man, a safe man to feel that exposed with. And in that 3 months of intense therapy, concluded with the therapeutic use of MDMA. And then from there, it really changed me so deeply and so profoundly. It completely altered my attitude. I read this other book called The Hands-Off Manager by Steve Chandler and I think his name is Dwayne White. I could have that second author's name wrong, but Steve Chandler, Hands-Off Manager. And it really started to talk about embodying leadership where people are put at ease because you begin to see their potential more than you begin seeing them as human capital to produce for you money. And I was like, wow. And I started to actually feel into those words. I began to feel into what that meant because I was beginning to realize that in myself. And I bought a neural feedback unit because I was like, okay, I'm going to stabilize this nervous system reset. I got to continue to grow. This is too good. I feel like I found the keys to life. And so I bought a neural feedback unit, ended up getting from there certified as a holistic transformation coach. And yeah, that was a huge pivot. That was the biggest revelation of my adult life, was healing at that deeper fundamental level of being through that kind of work.
And how long ago was that?
I was in 2014 when all this really began to shift. God, became a coach in 2015, started to coach people part-time from there. Yeah.
Okay. And backing up between the starting that job and that point in 2014, what was your relationship with weed, drinking, and religion like?
Yeah, really good question. Um, so weed was trying to be, you could smoke weed if you were buying it with a doctor's certificate. Legal, it hadn't become legalized. This was just where there were now dispensaries, but you had to have that, you know, $40 purchased medical certificate. That's just must be my migraines, doc. Okay, no problem. Here, take this to your dispensary. So easy. Anybody? Oh man, I got my sciatica, my whatever. I mean, you can make up any excuse. They'll write that. So that was then, and I kind of did that on the down low. My wife at the time, she didn't like it. She didn't like it at all. So I was being sneaky. And that was part of the healing in the somatic experiencing was like, he's like, yeah, man, you don't want to hide that stuff. That's a ripple in the kind of matrix of that relationship. He's like, yeah, that's not good. He's like, you got to be just transparent with who you are and be cool with it. And if she doesn't like it, well, work it out or quit or whatever. But don't be trying to hide and be shifty like that at all. And that was huge. And it also came a point right around that time with church where I'm just like, I told her at the time, I'm like, I don't want to go. It's like I started to learn all about just trauma and reading Drama of the Gifted Child and started to learn about inner child work. I'm like, why are we going? This is dumb. Like, I don't want to hear about that crap. They're not even talking about the stuff that's real to our humanity. They're just talking about religion and how to be a good boy or girl. I'm like, that's stupid. Like, I see the root of it. So I really had this attitude of like, okay, religion is dumb. All it's talking about is inner child healing at the end of the day anyways. We all are people with human problems. We just need to heal our nervous system and then all is love, right? And so that was my attitude back then. But there was this moment when I was like, no, I don't want to go to church. And it kind of felt cool. But at the same time, I was like, oh my God, it felt like I was telling my mother no to God. It really did kind of feel, I'm like, oh, I just said no, like, I don't want to go. And, and it kind of felt strengthening, but I was also a little bit nervous. And I was just like, okay, well, it is what it is. Yeah, I don't feel like going to church on Sunday. Because I was forced to go to that crap when I was a child, crap because it was forced by very unhealthy parents to become religious because they didn't know how to parent. And so all this stuff was like coming up during that time. But that was kind of my relationship with weed, try to sneak it on the down low. Church, I'm like, okay, I'm not so sure about that. I was seeing stuff in church where I'm just like, this is human politics. And you guys are just playing at church. You guys aren't you guys aren't embodied. You guys aren't doing any of the healing work. And you're just bypassing it all with religious terms. I started to see the power dynamics between even at the church we were going to occasionally, it was supposed to be this kind of like hipster, kind of cool, edgy Christian message. And I'm like, it's not. I see through all that. That's lame. Like, no, you guys are this is infighting. This is no different than anybody that doesn't even claim religion as something that they need. It's like, this is dumb. I'm out. And so that was kind of my relationship with religion back then. And yeah.
And what about partying or like heavier stuff?
No, that was never part of my life again. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so how did you find the somatic experiencing guy? Like, how did you
I
even
looked
know?
up inner child work.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked up inner child work, and I found him through that. Yeah.
And
And also, go ahead. Sorry.
What happened during those sessions?
Well, somatic experiencing is where, the leader, the person that is mentoring that soul into healing experiences. I mean, he has to have done the work. And so he did. He loved psychedelics and tripping and all that, but he was actually very mature through that process. And he was a good guide, a good spiritual guide in that way. But it really is holding space for somebody and kind of dropping in meaning you're feeling everything about them. You have an open energetic system. You're very empathic in that position, and you're secure enough in your personhood where you can allow another person to enter in to deeper and deeper states of their own being where those feelings are suppressed and where the emotional body is held captive under these deep layers of psychic tension and trauma.
So is there like a prompt or something? Like, how do you start getting into stuff? Like, are you talking about things or?
A little bit of that, but it is almost kind of like an induction. It's almost like, you just begin talking and they'll kind of slow you down. Like, okay, let's just ease into that a little bit. Like, tell me that again, but just pace yourself. So you're really kind of connecting with that person's body language, their breath. You're, checking in with them. Okay, where are you right now? Like, where are you? And where do you feel? What are you feeling in your body right now? Where is that sensation? Let's stay with that. And then you just sit in their presence and they witness that. It's very, very regulating. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, so then what was the transition? Oh, sorry, what's a neural feedback thing?
Oh, neurofeedback. Yeah. So you attach some sensors to the brain, different areas on the brain, and then that feeds into the computer or an interface, and then it plays music, and then your brain begins to when your brain is in a coherent state, meaning the different areas that you're focused on are communicating with each other, then the brain becomes harmonious by the sound of the music. The music becomes more integrated. It becomes louder. There's different ways of how neurofeedback, um, how the brain connects to the feedback through the music, but it's done through music, the sounds. And or sometimes it can be at a computer screen where you kind of see some game being played, and the game is like you're making it through the loops, or you're accomplishing your goal through the harmonizing the brain waves. And then when the brain begins to become discordant, or the habits of the brain start to kick in and starts to default, then the music doesn't necessarily become discordant like a scratched record, but it's not going to have the same vividness of harmonies. It's not going to have the same vividness of sounds. And so it's a way of neurologically, through the process of sound, getting immediate feedback. And it's quite extraordinary. Have you ever done heart math yourself? Do you know what
No.
that is?
Mm-mm.
So heart math is a power I would recommend for anybody that wants to explore their mind-body connection and understand how their emotions and their thinking and their breath are all really connected. If they want to explore heart-brain coherence, buy a heart math unit. That is because that's really what got me on this path. I mean, neurofeedback is like heart math on steroids because it's more passive. You just allow your brain to automatically adjust to the music, and over time you literally begin to harvest brain states of flow. You begin to automatically digest and metabolize into consciousness greater complexity of subjects, and it's extraordinary. It's changed my life. But before I bought neurofeedback, I was really into I was really into biofeedback through heart math. And that's amazing. It's a clip that you wear on your ear, and then it connects to your smartphone, a smartphone app, and you literally see this mandala, or there's different ways that you can gauge how well you are in coherence. But it's a way where you get real-time feedback. The sensor is exceptionally accurate. It's as accurate as an ECG unit, where the leads where they attach the chest to your heart. And so, but you can see real time um, how your thinking and how your emotional state and how your breath are really all interrelated. And it's that was the game changer for me. I'm like, okay, there's something to this. There's something about this biohacking stuff. And so, but then when I bought, neurofeedback, that really took things to the next level.
So what, you can see when it's like incoherent or something, and then it's like, I need to do more work to calm my nervous system down or something like that.
Yeah, it really shows you that you can self-regulate. It empowers you to do that through technology. It's incredible. Yeah.
Interesting. So was this stuff, it was just kind of like you ended up down this path, you were listening to podcasts through your mentor and whatever, you just kept and reading, and you just kept learning and following this path.
Yeah.
Huh. And then at what point did you leave your job? Or do you still work in insurance?
No, I left last August. Um, So kind of the summary of how I got to where I'm at today. So all that happened and had this big life transformation, big turn of events, big change of heart, change of character. My team ended up loving me. They didn't like me so much, but then I had this big change of heart and attitude and these huge internal shifts. And then I had like an average performing sales team. And then I ended up having the number one sales team in the company, ended up making double the money the next year. Everything changed. It was radical. And so, I mean, talk about kind of tasting new wine. That's what really shifted for me. But then 2017 rolls around. This is such an important part of the story to then bring it current. 2017 rolled around, and that year, right around the spring, entering into the fall, I ended up getting demoted from a management position. There was a company-wide reorganization, so about 11 managers were reorganized away from that position, and so that happened. I learned that my wife had been cheating on me, and I had a terrible ecstasy trip at a music festival using ecstasy recreationally, and so that completely decimated me. That wrecked me. It just made me feel like it kind of literally almost had to start all over again. But I knew what it took to get back to health again. But I was wrecked. I was destroyed. It it just shows, I share this to let people know that yeah, healing really does come in stages. There was more that needed to be done. And that guy that I did the somatic experiencing with, he said something that stuck with me. And it wasn't really realized until around 2018, 2019, when I really was in the mud and that deep, deep layers of healing. And it was when I was doing the somatic experiencing through him, he says, he read me like a book. I mean, this is how I knew he was good. He knew what he was doing. He was like, listen, your dad and your brother didn't like how outgoing and how alpha male and how much of a natural leader you actually were and are. And so they bullied you and they wanted to intimidate you. They didn't like you. That's the family system you grew up. Those guys, they weren't good to you at all. And I was like, that kind of rocked me. And it wasn't until 2017 when all that stuff happened that I ended up getting a different mentor who was even more advanced than that guy. And he ended up saying the same things. This was the beginning, early part of 2019. And he said the same thing. He says, yeah, ooh, yeah, you got some stuff in there. And I was like, what stuff? He says, yeah, your dad and your brother, man, they were bad guys. They were not good, man. They did this, that, and the other to you, and you need to forgive them. Because I need to forgive them. Forgiveness? I got to do forgiveness on them? He's like, yeah. He's like, that aligns with the frequency of your heart. I was like, frequency of the heart. I mean, I was so proud. I'm like, the heart, I got a heart. He's like, all that repressed anger. And then right around that period, right after him, I got into bioenergetics, found Alexander Lowen's material, and that, wow. So he was saying, so the thing with that is what I realized, Delia, and this is really what kind of set me up for being a coach to other people and helping them heal deeply on these deep levels is what I realized is I had so much repressed anger. That first stage of healing was really the first stage of believing like, wow, it's not totally and utterly my fault. Like there's more to the story here, and I don't have to be pissed at the world like it owes me something. That was the first stage of healing. Second stage was, okay, well, let's do greater excavation to clear out the truth of who I am as a man, to be energetically strong in my masculine core identity, which my dad and my brother didn't have. That's why they were bullies. They weren't secure in who they were as men. They had an inferiority complex. They were intimidated by other men and the world of business and the world of men. And they took it out all on me because I was outgoing, very outgoing and had different dynamics of personality they didn't have. And so when I realized, and that really hit me like a ton of bricks, I was already in such a broke down state. And then hearing that, I'm like, well, shit, what do I do? And I found bioenergetics on how to really heal the body from anger. And so I started to energetically build up my boundary again. Anger is a violation of boundary. And it's a biological reaction, our body being violated from being in, it's a, the natural response of the body when its integrity when the personality of our body is being violated, the natural response is a righteous response. It's anger. Anger is a righteous moral response of the body saying no. Our nervous system, our immune system is all connected to our ability to say no, keep out, that's not good, I don't want it. And so when I started to really realize that connection and how deeply connected the ability to self-love depends on our ability to get over anger. Having anger repressed and held in place by chronic unconscious chronic muscular tensions limits our ability to have self-love and to be able to express that love towards life, towards nature, towards others, towards God, to really know ourselves. Anger, when it's healed, causes anger heals. When we heal the anger of our body for being disrespected, violated, imposed upon, that's a healing. It's the healing emotion. When we can heal anger, we become healed. That's what people need to know. And I didn't realize that that was the missing key for me. When you heal anger, you heal your sexuality. You heal your ability to fully express yourself and your energetic potency as a man. And that healed me. It healed me deeply. And it was a big process to get through all that stuff. And then I left my job last year to do this full time. I left it. I'd done well enough and saved up enough, and where I'm like, okay, I can do this full time. I'd been coaching people part time, and I had the blessing of my mentor to be like, yeah, you're good. I'll do it. You have my blessing. And I didn't have that before. I wanted to kind of teach his stuff before. And he's like, no, you're not really ready. You want to give them the good stuff. He's like, you don't have the good stuff yet. And it's something I didn't want to hear, but I was like, okay, I guess that's just where I'm at in development. I guess it is what it is. I mean, what am I going to do? Fight that? He sees me in better ways, more clear ways than I see myself. I trust him. And so, but then last year I'm like, hey man, I really got to, there just came a point when I was selling, life insurance, and I'm on the phone, and I still was doing really well. It was nice, cozy job, air conditioned home, six figures. I mean, I knew the stuff backwards and forwards, but I'm like, okay, this isn't changing anybody's lives. It's protecting lives. It's protecting the family's financial security. Great. But it's not my passion. And I would just find myself what people call the downloads. And I just find myself having this kind of, it just got to a point where I'm like, okay, no more. I can't be chained to this phone for 8 hours a day doing something that I'm not passionate about when I know I could be out there really blessing lives, really helping lives, really ministering to people in a dynamic way to show them that, yeah, they got potential in them, and to be able to see that and spot that in them, and show them a very systematic methodology through bioenergetics on how to heal their nervous system, how to holistically become integrated. And so that's kind of the story with that.
Amazing. Have you heard of internal family systems or
Love it.
parts?
Yes, very much. That all was part of it. I discovered it in 2014 along with everything else. How about you? Is that something you're familiar with?
Yeah. And I was just thinking when you said that about your dad and brother. I feel like it's a really helpful framework to think of the self, that it's like everyone has the self, which is calm, compassionate, courageous, all these
That's right.
things. That's like the pure light within everyone. But the
That's right.
parts can take over. And so when you think, because I can resonate with some of that. And I think from a female perspective as well, it's like that threat from other women, and there's like subconscious stuff that go, or same with that
Oh yeah.
complex between
Huge.
parents and whatever. So the
Yeah.
subconscious stuff that goes on, that's like, I need to push this person down, or even between friendships, it's like this person succeeding, I need to like make them smaller. And then that's kind of what the work I'm doing at the moment, that it's like, oh my God, I've been making myself smaller to not be a threat to people, because if I'm too whatever, people don't like it and they'll try and cut me down, which hurts. But then it's
Ooh.
like understanding it through parts. So it's like, it's not that they're a bad person, it's like a part of them subconsciously is in fear and feels threatened. So like your dad and brother, or it's something, it's a part, it's not them, the self, it's just a part that's like, okay, we need to take him down, and then that part's attacking you, and then it hurts, a vulnerable part of you that becomes wounded. But I just feel like this framework's so helpful because it can be so difficult for people to be like, oh, wait, this person was really bad, but no, but they're not bad. But then it's like, oh, yeah, it's a part of them was like really horrible. And for,
Mm.
extreme stuff, abuse, violence, it's like, oh,
Mm.
yeah, a part was abusive. But it's
Yeah,
like, that's how you can forgive because you separate it from, it's like, it's not the whole
that's right.
person. But I mean,
That's right.
forgiveness as
That's
well,
right.
it's more to do with us. It's just like, I'm going to set myself free rather
100%.
than.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. People can get into this trap of righteous morality, forgive all. It's like, no, develop a relationship first where you're resourced into understanding the situation and realize, no, there was a real wound there. So many people will use forgiveness as a bypass to the deeper healing work that they need to really enter into. It's like first develop self-acceptance in who you were in that fearful, contracted state. First witness yourself there and then show compassion there. And then, forgiveness should really be administered first so we understand from what you're saying is where the other person was coming from. And you're not really forgiving them as much as you are forgiving yourself for being afraid and terrified and having the experience from them. It is really this kind of like, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. But you can only really say that from a mature, integrated prefrontal cortex that has overcome those implicit memories of a family system that locked us into specific roles and emotional dynamics that had us becoming and feeling less than we truly are in our potential.
Mm. And yeah, and it needs to be released. I think that's the other thing. I mean, that's a really common
Huge.
thing that happens with
Yeah.
like dating dynamics. And it's like, I'm so angry, this person abandoned me or they were a dick or whatever. And it's like, I need to let them know, because now it's like boundaries. Everyone knows about boundaries. So it's like, I need to tell them that violate my boundaries. But it's like, okay, write it all down. Like, let it go. Yeah, that person hurt you. Let it out. But you don't need to send it to them. Like, you don't, like, let out that energy and then burn it or whatever it is, because it's
Yeah.
not.
So
But
good.
I mean, people have to learn, because then people go and send abusive messages and then they realize
Yeah.
it
No, what
doesn't
you oh,
help.
so good. Yeah, Delia, I just want to say how much I respect and honor that level of maturity in you. You're right. Because again, you're writing the journal there. You're journaling it, you're journaling to that hurt part as the witness. So you really have to be in that kind of calm and collected state and then be able to dive into that with not getting consumed by it. And that's where people don't understand is, no, there has to be a part of me that can witness this and begin speaking to the feeling and the emotional charge in me, not in them, in me. And then once I establish rapport and connection, if I can get that part of me to trust me, then I'm not having to justify this feeling to another person that was acting unconsciously, that was acting in a place where, yeah, they could have been in a very insensitive, uncaring space. But by externalizing that, I'm missing the gold that can be discovered from those wounded parts, which was just the vulnerability in me, And but that's so beautiful. You said that. That's resonates deeply with with what I've experienced, and it's really true. Everything you just said there, it's so beautiful. Appreciate that. Yeah.
So what was that recovery like from that kind of like mini rock, oh well, whatever, it's kind of a rock bottom in 2017, being demoted
That was
with.
definitely the ultimate rock bottom. Was that one? The earlier part with the knee injury, that was okay, but that was nothing like what I experienced in 2017. Um, so I take back what I said earlier, that the 2017 was really kind of the ultimate rock bottom. It really was. And that was kind of the final stage of healing, to where now I know myself so well that, there really are no missing parts in me. I don't feel, I'm still always like, look, don't get me wrong. I haven't reached some kind of ultimate level of integration and enlightenment. Life doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. Anybody that says that, they're trying to sell you something or con you out of something. They're not being real. This is a very real healing experience. I'm very down to earth. And but it really has come out. What came out of that is understanding this principle that I didn't have dialed in. I thought I had it dialed in, but I didn't really have it dialed in. Our experience of salvation, self-regulation, holistic healing, an opening to God where we feel connected to something greater than ourselves, 100% depends. If we want that sustainable and on an ongoing basis, 100% depends on a healing spiritual relationship with our own flesh and blood, with our own body, with our own feelings, with the importance of our feelings. It's overcoming all of the contempt we were shown in childhood toward our human experience, toward having an emotional feeling self that is authentic. That's what gets robbed of us. That's what gets denied, is the authenticity of the feeling state of our body. That is the true self, is the authentic feeling state of the body. It's not complicated. It truly is. This is why somatic therapy and experiencing is why it works so well, is because you're tapping into what a person really feels. It starts to reorganize the unconscious mind that it's safe to feel again, that we can truly be our true self in those moments of vulnerability. And then we start to stack wins of that realization that we no longer have to be barricaded and locked in under this false self that has us marrying the wrong person, that has us working the wrong job, that has us going to the wrong parties, that has us creating the wrong circle of friends. So many people wake up out of that 50, 60 years later and they're like, what the hell kind of life was I living? That wasn't me. And it's sad, but that's what happens. And so it really was that realization that, yeah, all the greatest healing that I'm going to do will be in the connection that I have with my own humanity, my own body, my own human animal, and truly honoring that. I believe, it's my conviction, and I really believe this. This is the most selfless thing that we can do. It's not working at the homeless shelter. That's okay. It's not serving at the church on Sunday. That's okay too. It's not, putting together the men's group or women's group or drum circle or none of that. It's connect with who you really are. Learn bioenergetics. Learn a way of being where you are constantly cultivating that internal relationship with your soul through the medium of the body. If you get that relationship down well, there's no limits to the kind of amazing opportunities and people you'll meet in life, because you start living and breathing from the authentic feeling state of your body that is in harmony with goodness, that's in harmony with your true nature, that is good. Yeah, we have that side of us too, but we don't put attention on that. We heal that material. And this is the life journey, is just developing a constant rapport and connection with those inner parts of ourself and how it feels and how it's expressed through the body.
So how long did it take to kind of come out of that period of darkness to thriving again?
I started to really feel so much more at home with myself right around 2021, 2022. And then, and that's when things really began to shift in a big way, where basically all of like the deep unconscious wounds began to heal. It was kind of cool to have that level of rebound, because of all the previous work that I had done. All that stuff just started to come back online. It really was healing my nervous system in a dynamic way that made all the difference in the world. Yeah, because I never stopped. I never gave up. I was like, I'm persevering. I don't care what anybody else is doing. I'm staying in the fight. I am not giving up. And it was through that perseverance that really started to give me a deeper embodied, a durable hope. It started to really make the scripture come alive, like hope comes through perseverance and not stopping. Character is what produces hope. Character that's developed. I'm not going to stop. I know what to do. I got these different modalities and I'm not quitting until it becomes exquisite and becomes a love relationship of good feelings that I can then share with other people and help them on their healing journey. It works. It works. It takes time, but it definitely works.
Wow. So it was like a good 3 or 4 years. But I guess you would have been more like stable and functioning during that time, not like the other rock bottom where it was like the addiction and you couldn't work.
Yeah, that's right. I was still working the entire time, still working my way out of the hell of my mind.
Wow. Okay. Cool. I feel like it's like exciting to see how this keeps evolving because I guess it's kind of this new chapter of being fully coaching and not in insurance is only, yeah, it's only been a year, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is exciting and it is just anticipating some really big things that are going to be happening over here at Genius of the Body. And just some really, really big things are going to be popping here. And my methodology, my offer, my system of coaching, it's all so dialed in now. It's just very refined. And so, yeah, I can just see some really big things in the future. I have a very clear vision on that developing. And yeah, I'm excited to see what's next. I want to be married. I want to have a family. I want to build community. I want to have this online school. I want to just really popularize bioenergetics to let people know that there is a very specific system and methodology to heal and to heal deeply and profoundly so we can be at our best selves and be okay with the relational process that it requires to know it always is one foot in front of the other. And every day, it's just it's not a huge investment of time. I mean, the system that I teach is just one 90-minute session a week with 15 to 20 minutes of daily practices, and you're on your way. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. It's not more complicated than that. Yeah.
Cool. How do you explain what bioenergetics is, by the way, like in a sentence?
Yeah. Well, in a sentence. Okay. Um, it's the process of reconnecting to the roots of our soul so we can understand who we truly are underneath all the denial and repression of childhood trauma and pain. It's really coming to terms with who we are and organically strengthening the nervous system to establish a new nervous system set point. So our window of tolerance of accepting all of our failures and woundings becomes more and more tolerable until we break through. And we have through lines of greater embodiment and connection to where life and vitality replaces trauma and tension that was there as a denial of our wounding.
Cool. I'm so excited to keep like learning more about this stuff. Okay. But I will ask you the last 3 questions. And then we can talk about where people can find you or whatever. So, how do you stay grounded? These are the questions I ask everyone. So, but it's funny. It
Yeah,
sounds like
good.
I'm
Good
asking that
question.
specifically.
So I have my daily spiritual embodiment practices. It takes me about 50 minutes, is what I got that down to. All in all, it's about an hour of daily practices. Um, I'll incorporate neurofeedback a couple of times a week. It's fun to see like how how much I can get into those flow states now. It's pretty dynamic. And yeah, that's how I stay grounded, is I just stay very real with my body. I've learned the art form of reparenting my body and bringing my body to emotional health and vitality and just really getting connected to who I am with a felt experience of who I am as a spirit of the Most High God that doesn't die. And while I'm here, I want to have the most dynamic life possible through a spiritual healing relationship with my body. I mean, that's how I stay grounded.
And the practices, is it like meditation, breath work, somatic stuff?
There's a little bit of breath work. It's more of kind of so the bioenergetics in my coaching practice is always square one. We always start there so we can relieve the body of the unconscious tensions that are binding our spirit into place and limiting our expression. So we want to overcome the limitations to our breathing, overcome the limitations to breathing. That's bioenergetics. I'll still do a 90-minute session a week to keep things fresh on that level. Um, but the real bread and butter of what I do is the biophotonic energetic form training. That's really the repatterning of the energy. That's really kind of the felt sensing experience of that differences between who I am as a spirit and who my body is and what it is as being attached to me. It's really, I don't want to sound like, you know, I don't know how this is going to sound, but it really is that spiritual practice of understanding with a felt reality of this experience of, my spiritual energy, as opposed to just like, oh, I'm just this blood and bones and the sack of meat that eventually dies, and life is limited. And so it really is on that other level that I spend that hour a day in, and that biophotonic energetic form training to really manifest more and more of who I am and enjoying that experience of being directly connected to God. Yeah.
Cool. And is your religious practice now, it's more just like a personal practice between you and God, and you don't go to churches anymore, or you go
Well,
to church?
no, I mean, I went to church yesterday, but it's a totally different experience than I've ever had before in life. I truly do love people that believe in the Christian faith. I mean, I've part of my, we didn't go too much into this, but some of my biggest growth, Delia, has been literally, from what I'd mentioned about kind of my father, brother wounds and stuff in the family system I grew up with, from the aggressive inputs of others that, felt like I was too much competition for them. Has really been a weekly Bible study that I've done over the last 5 years, and a mentor that I meet with over the last 5 years. And, it's so fun to begin telling them more as they've gotten to know me. I've gotten to know them. They don't do any of the bioenergetics or energetic training that I do, but that doesn't matter, because there's still such a respect and such an appreciation just for being men, just for being able to show up and being able to have, honest discourse of what's going on in our lives. And so it's been strong healing has happened in my connection to other men, and knowing who I am through that process. And so, yeah, but what's so fun is there's one specific author that I love talking about. His name is Kurt Thompson, and he's the only Christian. He's a Christian psychotherapist. He's the only author I've ever read in the Christian genre where he literally is using talking about mindfulness, talking about attachment theory, using neuroscience, and showing how it all fits together inside the context and framework of the Christian faith. It's absolutely dynamite. And I've gotten my one mentor, who's a 70-year-old, retired English teacher and basketball coach. I meet with him every couple of weeks. And then I've gotten even my Tuesday Bible study group all into this gentleman's work, because it's a way for them to understand the mind-body connection in the context of Christian faith. I think so many people are lacking that. And so that's been a lot of fun. And so it really has been a level of, male intimacy with other men, of the mind-body connection, of iron sharpening iron, of us helping each other reach that potential of understanding who we are in the innocence of being justified before God because of that complete finished work of Jesus. And then just seeing, okay, well, now that we know that, how can we feel good about ourselves and live an abundant life here because of all the blessings that we have to be thankful for? And then understanding that on kind of the, self-regulation, holistic healing, and using this one author's kind of work. And so it's fun to be able to promote that. Like, hey, this is not some new age Eastern mysticism. You don't have to be Buddhist. You can actually be of the Christian faith and really enjoy these mind-body practices. So that's been a lot of fun. That's how I approach my faith these days.
Amazing. Okay. Is there a book that has had the biggest impact on you? You've mentioned quite a few, but
I have. I would say Drama of the Gifted Child. That was the big turning point for me. And then as of recently, I would say Anatomy of the Soul by Kurt Thompson. Huge book. Great book. So influential. Embodied Spirituality in a Sacred World by Michael Washburn. If you really want to understand the true mind-body connection and spirit versus body, and how there is a union of ego and flesh, how to have instincts and virtue connect for integration. If anybody's interested in integration, that's the guy. That's the book. It's higher level, but it's digestible and understandable. It's dynamic. Embodied Spirituality in a Sacred World. I'd recommend that to anybody that's been on their spiritual journey. It's deep and it's good, and it's not too thick. It's not like Ken Wilber's material. This is the refined, more potent version of Spiral Dynamics and Integral Theory by Ken Wilber. I think it's a much better, cleaner version. So I'd really say those three books are dynamite. Yeah.
cool. And last question, what 3 words describe the best version of Daniel Bradley?
Ooh. Loving. God loving, and people loving. That's more than as the God loving, people love. I'd say, yeah. I mean, I would say joyful, embodied, and loving. Like I would even. Mhm.
Amazing. I love that. Okay. And how
Mm.
can people find you? Learn more.
Mm. Yeah. So my handle on X is Genius of the Body. My website is geniusofthebody.com. And yeah, I have a new YouTube channel that's still in its infancy, but I'm going to start growing that too. So really those three places.
Cool. Thanks so much. I'm so
Yeah.
excited to learn more about this. It's like probably like a lifetime of learning though.
Mm. Yeah. Delia, thank you so much. You've been an amazing host. I really appreciated your feedback and how you conducted this podcast episode. Thank you for having me back. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit better. You got a lot there. You got a lot going on. You're a very interesting woman, Delia. So I just want to encourage you to stay the course and keep growing because you're doing great work. And thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this conversation. Feel free to share it with someone if you think they'd get something out of it. And you can also subscribe or follow the podcast so then you find out about new episodes. And purely for my own ego, no, just kidding. I think it actually helps the algorithm and helps more people find the podcast. If you want to rate or review, like, go for it. And see you next time.